Hello there, Trevor here from Double Bill Movies. Well, it's the time for a 39 episode. That is the 39 successfully prosecuted video nasties from the 1980s. Now I've cleared my throat, you can hear me better. So this episode is going to be about Driller Killer. This was the second time I'd seen it. I'm not sure if Bumper had seen it before, but I'll read his notes first and you'll get my thoughts as we go along. So, The Driller Killer, and his little overview says, The Driller Killer is a 70s grindhouse independent film from Abel Farrera, who was giving us an early indication of the style of movies he was going to be famous for. Yes, now, as this was only my second time viewing this and not really know much about Abel Farrera, and having not seen any of his other films, I had a look on IMDb, and of course I'm sure a lot of you may know that he did King of New York with Christopher Walken, which Arrow have done a nice 4K of. He did the original Bad Lieutenant with Harvey Keitel, and he did Snake Eyes, also with Harvey Keitel. Both of those last two, which have been remade with Nicolas Cage in the Harvey role. So anyway, we have three sort of questions that we do for these videos. And the first one is, does it feel like watching a video nasty? So Bumper says, yes. There isn't a huge amount of violence, but it's quite hardcore when it does come. Plus, the movie just has an overall scuzzy feel about it. Yep, totally agree. So I watched, well, in fact, we both watched the same cut, which is the longer cut. It's the pre-release cut. Basically, Abel decided that there were some scenes he didn't want in the film when it was released. So he actually instigated the cuts. So what people saw in the theatre was only sort of 96 minutes long. But what Bumper and I watched last night was, I think it was like 101 minutes, something like that. I have to say that I agree. Yes, it's definitely like watching a video nasty. It was originally filmed on 16mm, but Arrow have done, for this release, this Blu-ray release, which has been out a few years now, this was a 4K scan. And it kind of makes sense that some of the shots were really impressive and had a lot of detail in them. But some of them, as I read the booklet in here, they were missing some of the 16mm negative, so they had to go to a 35mm blow up and source the scenes from there. I think actually, despite them being 35mm, because they're the blow up of a 16mm, they're the really grainy parts when you watch the film. So yes, the violence doesn't come until sort of halfway through the film. And watching the longer cut, there's a few scenes that actually I think made more sense. Especially the opening one, where him and his girlfriend, what's his name? Reno. So Abel plays a guy called Reno. Reno and his girlfriend go to a church because they've been asked to come and visit the church because there's a guy in the front row of the seats who doesn't know who he is, but he seems to have the telephone number and the name of Reno. So anyway, I found that scene a bit strange the first time I watched it in the theatrical cut. And I think that's partly what put me off watching it the first time. I mean, I watched it, but anyway, this time it sort of made more sense, and I found out that I was in the perfect mood to watch this film. And yeah, so as I said, Bumper is perfectly correct. There isn't much violence, but when there is, it's pretty violent. So, should it be a video nasty is the second question we ask. Bumper says yes, although not the worst of the nasties. Calling it the Driller Killer was always going to get it added to the list, and when the spotlight is on the drill. It's a right little gore fest. Yep. They really go to town, and there's some really great special effects. I mean, you know, that's not the most famous scene in this film for any particular reason, apart from, you know, it's a very well done scene. And none of the special effects I found stood out to be like really bad. I was impressed with the way all of it was done. And I just kind of like halfway through the film, or sort of a third way through the film, Reno sees an advert on the TV for this battery pack, and that's when you sort of see cogs start to go around in his head as he's getting fed up with life and he wants to try and do something about it. Clearly not the nicest thing to do, but anyway, that's where all the things really start to unfold. And the third part of our criteria, another question I suppose, should modern horror fans check it out? Bumper says, maybe. If you are a fan of Abel Farrera's other works and you're a deep diving the director, then you definitely need to see it. It is very rough looking and a little bit too grimy for your average viewer or grain hater. Yes, if you don't like grain, you know, you're not going to get on with this film. But I think horror fans, modern horror fans, should definitely check this film out. In a bizarre way, it's not a horror. One of the things I realised that put me off the first time watching it was, I guess I had the slasher sort of tropes in my head. You know, a guy just going around with a drill killing people, which is what he does. But it's not about that. It's not about the drill killing at all, really. It's about the society of the time and just lack of money. He's trying to paint and he needs more money to do that, but then he needs more money to pay his rent. And things just keep spiraling out of control, really. So anyway, Bumper's overview. I enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would, which is always the biggest compliment I can give it, or I can give to a movie that he was anxious about watching. It does have its downfalls. It does often feel like it's a student movie, and there are random filler scenes and a band playing songs, which upset the flow of the narrative and in turn the violence. Imagine like when you are watching The Young Ones, if you know what that is. It's a British sitcom series, and Motorhead pop up out of nowhere. It's a lot like that, but not cool. So yeah, now bizarrely, watching it this time, I was not put off by the band scenes. This actually added to Reno kind of losing the plot. Some of them went on a bit long, I have to say, and yes, as you know, Bumper using the term filler definitely is correct. But being a musician myself, having been in lots of scenes like that, those kind of venues, you know, backstage rooms and that kind of stuff, it sort of, it felt home to me. You know, I've been in all those situations. Some of them I don't like, and you know, try to avoid if I can. But so yeah, it was very homely to me, bizarrely, watching all that kind of stuff on the screen. And I thought the guitar work from what's his name, something Coca-Cola, Tony Coca-Cola, was it, from the band The Roosters? I'm guessing they were a real band, and they were actually playing live on film. Yeah, it just sort of resonated with me. So this time round, I could cope with it and appreciate it for what it was and why it was put into the film. So there's a little bit more to this overview. So he says, and then there's the runtime. I mean, it's overlong by about 20 minutes. So they could have cut this band scenes, no problem, and you would have had a much better experience. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, obviously, one of the things is Reno trying to paint, and he can hear this band rehearsing. So maybe in that respect, you don't cut the sound of them rehearsing, but maybe you just don't need to see them rehearsing or even playing live at the venue. So yeah, I can sort of see that. He says the gore is really good. There is a scene where the guy just loses it and kills about 3 or 4 homeless people in one spree, and it's glorious. Then there is the famous scene from the front cover. Yeah, that scene goes how you want it to go. Yeah, like I said, yeah, that is the infamous scene, and it, you know, that is a still from the film. It's not like one of these covers that you think, oh, that's a great cover of a film, and you find it's nothing to do with the film at all. It does get a bit crazy, and you know, this is where Reno's really lost the plot. And Bumper goes on to say, overall, I wouldn't be in a rush to watch it again, but I thought it was okay. And he gives it 6 out of 10. So, as I've already alluded to, I had a much better experience with it this time. I also wouldn't rush to watch it again. And actually, I watched it in 4:3. So basically, an open matte version, getting the full image from the 16mm frame, because there is an option to watch it in 185, so it will basically fill your screen apart from the tiny masks top and bottom. And well, I read the inlay. This is a 2-disc steelbook. It has DVD and Blu-ray, and now I didn't play it that loud because I knew I wasn't going to enjoy it if I did play it that loud. But you know, if you want the full experience, then play this movie loud. Basically, as I already said, Abel wanted to cut about 5 minutes out of the film, and here we get both cuts, and he actually gave Arrow permission to release the pre-release version, as it's called, and I think that's really generous of him to give us, the audience, the option to choose which one we want to watch. Now, for the first time watching it, if you want the full experience, go for the shorter version, the theatrical version that Abel wanted released, and as what was seen in theatres. You know, you might not find it as jarring as I did, but on a second watch, going for the longer version, I found it much more coherent of a story, and a little bit more character development. It actually changes the perspective of the lead female, his girlfriend. As I also read in this, it has actually a breakdown of what has been added, and you know, the time code of how long that scene is for. So if you do watch the longer version and you think, okay, so what was added, read the booklet. Excuse me. Obviously that means you need to find a first edition with the booklet. So anyway, my score, I give it 7 out of 10. If I was to give it an 8, then it means I would watch it any time. But because I don't want to watch it any time, but I did enjoy it, it gets a 7 from me. So up next, and hopefully now we're going to start going through these a bit faster, because we've hopefully got through all of the really bad cannibal films. But we both quite like this one. So up next is Evil Speak, and that'll be on Bumper's channel. So make sure you go subscribe to Bumper's channel, and if you want to carry on following this series, make sure you subscribe to my channel as well. make sure you give us a thumbs up on all our videos, just to get them out there. There is a playlist in my playlist section of all the episodes so far, so if you're new to this series and don't realise that I do this in conjunction with Bumpers Movies, then yes, follow the playlist and you will alternate between our channels as we present each of the 39 video nasties. Anyway, until the next episode, take it easy.